Welcome back to the show, everyone. I'm your host, Charlotte Stebbing-Mills, and today I'm joined by Neetu Argarwal, who is a breast cancer survivor. Given the title A Walking Miracle, we'll definitely be finding more out about that. And she is the founder of Enlightening Souls. She is a full-time healer, reader, counselor, motivational speaker, and spiritual teacher. And today we're going to be diving into the topic of loneliness. Welcome to the show, Neetu. It's so good to see you.
Same here. Thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you for giving us your time and your energy. I'm really, really looking forward to where this conversation can go, because I think loneliness is such a hot topic right now. But before we jump into the topic, let's go on a little bit of a journey. What do we need to know about you that's brought you to where you are today, having this conversation about loneliness?
Okay. So my journey hasn't been very easy. So I am an investment banker. And it took me, I think in 2018, I became a full-time spiritual teacher. Loneliness, the topic that really interested me, the thing is that I've always been a lonely child. So when it was put up, I was like, oh my God, this resonates so much, because I've been searching, why people are so lonely and how we can come out of it. And when this topic came up, I was already looking for something. Basically, I use my therapies, I use my healing, I use my modalities that I have. So I always understood that the loneliness came from somewhere.
Yeah.
Either it's a childhood thing, or is it coming from my past? Is it coming from my inner child? And is it coming from my belief? So, all this has already been going on since past 1 or 2 months. And I was telling myself, you really need to work on this and, find out why you are so lonely. Even when I have so many people around, still there was something that always missed in me. So when, this topic came up and you approached, I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. I really need to get into this, because this is what I have been really looking for. Because I have so many clients who come up and they're going through so much. And I try to understand, especially with my own example of my own life. So I can relate to them. I can make them understand much more better.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, this is what brought me over here. And yeah,
I really appreciate that. I really appreciate your curiosity on the topic. And this, loneliness is such a big issue in the world right now. And I don't expect, this podcast to give everybody the answers and magically there's this big solution for loneliness. And so that's why I think this is going to be such a good conversation, because I think both you and I, in our personal experience, have felt and touched what loneliness is all about. And I know that our listeners would have felt and touched it at some point on their journeys as well. So Neetu, I would love it if you could perhaps just share some of those moments on your journey that have highlighted perhaps a sense of loneliness. Because I know you obviously mentioned there being a lonely child, but obviously going through kind of your health challenges as well, there's got to have been some loneliness in the mix there. So I'd love to hear, like, what's been your experience of it?
Okay, so if I start from, I feel it comes from inner child, the basic root of it. When I started exploring myself, I remember it's basically happens when, you shift the space. So if I kept on shifting along with my dad wherever he got the job. So I had a lot of friends. I remember still when I was still 6 to 7 years old, I had a lot of friends around. But when he started shifting to spaces, it was very difficult for me to adjust. To keep making new friends, to get into the new aura, because everybody had their own friends already.
Yeah.
So when you go in the mid of the academy, it's very tough to get along with people.
Yeah.
So that created, I still remember when I was small, I did not have much friends, and there was a lot of restriction from parents. I feel sometimes we fail to understand a child.
Yeah.
And we don't even ask and, confront a child that what is that something that you really, how are you adjusting into the school? How is things going around with you? And yes, there was a lot of body shame. So when I shifted out to Kuwait and I had put on weight, it was always uncomfortable for me to mix up with those people. I became very low self-esteem, lack of self-love.
Yeah.
I was always feeling, oh my God, I don't fit in them.
Yeah.
I'm healthy, I'm not beautiful. This is something that, you don't understand as a child. It gets into you so much. You close all the doors.
Yeah.
You don't want to get into it. So that was something that I remember, I used to be at home by myself, play by myself. I used to feel more comfortable in my own space, you know. I felt that, okay, at least no one was judging me.
Mm.
No one was, you know, trying to bully me. Especially in school, the people tend to bully, even the teachers, because you're a new student, you're trying to adjust into this. They don't understand the psychology of a child. It's a love that the child needs, the adjusting that the child needs. And
Mm.
even parents are so busy, they forget.
Yeah.
So, you know, that was something that I still remember. And, you know, I started becoming an introvert girl, a person who used to be so extrovert, playing with people around. I just loved my space.
Mm.
And, you know,
That I love that so much, Neetu. Thank you for sharing that, because I think a lot of people listening to can relate. And I think it fascinates me how I have these conversations on the podcast, and often the whole inner child in our early childhood comes up in conversation, because it does obviously shape who we are. And I think you're absolutely right in what you said. There is often, not always, but often there is a lack of awareness of the communication that we're having in certain situations. It was only actually when you just said that I was kind of reflecting a little bit on my experience. And I didn't move around so much, I don't think, as a kid compared to perhaps what you have, but I definitely I shifted schools, like to a very different area when I went from primary school to senior school. That definitely played a part for me in kind of my ability to socialize efficiently, I think, or effectively. And I think the notion of going into like different clubs, I would always, and this was a sign that something was going on with my ability to connect, is that I would try something, I would go and try a certain sport, and then I'd give it up after like the first go. And then my parents would like push me to go and do something else, I'd give it up after the first go. But instead of my parents asking me what's going on, like what's happening, it was, oh, she's not interested in that, well, let's just go on. And then eventually, you know, they got busy with their things, and you know, life unfolds as it does. But it's just those micro moments that I think we often forget until we actually take a moment to reflect, that explains some behaviors, I think, in our experience of loneliness.
yes. So it's like communication. We don't communicate. So I still remember when I came out of college, and you know, I came from a girls' school. So again, it became so difficult for me to go and adjust into where there was a co-ed school,
Yeah.
college, basically, when I landed up into.
Mm.
It again made me withdraw in myself. Again, it came. Again, the same thing. I'm not good enough.
Yeah.
You always keep feeling, oh, I'm not good enough. And you're always compared.
Mm.
Someone is better than me. You know, the lack of self-love, there's lack of self-esteem, low self-confidence. And the biggest lack that I feel is the communication, as you said.
Mm.
We don't sit and ask, and we don't even communicate. Like, you know, we have that fear.
Yep.
Oh my God, if I share and tell someone this is what I'm feeling like, what are they going to judge me on?
Exactly. And that's really interesting that you say that, because there will be people that are listening to this that maybe they're triggered by it, maybe they really resonate with perhaps what we're speaking about on this topic, which is why they've clicked play. But the reality is like so many people are experiencing it. And there was a review that was done recently by the BMC Public Health, and they looked at 113 countries. And the results of that systematic review showed that on a global scale, like global impact we're talking here, suggests that roughly 1/3 of the population are experiencing loneliness, with 1 in 12 people experiencing it to the point that it's becoming problematic in their lives. So it's safe to say that we're in a loneliness pandemic, I think. And I think the pandemic that we experienced, and I think we're having the after effects of now, I think have definitely contributed to that as well. So I think anybody listening to this that might be maybe feeling alone, it's important to know that actually, do you know what? We're all feeling it on some level, some way, shape, or form, some more intense than others, but often it's a very universal experience. And I think there's a lot of shame perhaps that can come around feeling lonely. Like you said, we don't talk about it, we don't communicate about it. I don't reach out to my friends and say, hey, I'm feeling lonely. I wouldn't use that language. I might reach out to them, say, hey, how are you? Is very different, right? And I'm not then being as vulnerable as I could, which can create more separation and more loneliness. So it's just this fascinating like entanglement that I'm seeing unfolding before us.
Yes, completely agreed. And you know what happens? People, they can't stay at home. They just don't want to be alone anymore.
Mm.
So they get into wrong relationships because they just want to be around people. I remember when I was working in Citibank, there was a colleague of mine and he would love to have friends. So what do the people do? Because they don't want to be alone, they become people pleasing.
Yep.
They go out of their way just to adjust into that space or the aura or with the people around. They start picking up their stuff, and they would just do a favor, they would just keep doing things for people just because they don't want to be alone. And there's so much fear of being alone, and we get into depression.
Yeah.
And we don't even know that we are in depression.
So
the worst part is we don't even know that we are there.
what is, I agree with that completely. I'm curious to know, like, what do you feel the difference is between being alone and being lonely?
Okay. Oh, this is very beautiful. So I remember, I'll just give you an example because I usually go with examples. I remember when I had started my journey as a theta healer, and I didn't realize till then how lonely I was because I was always trying to give my call. I didn't want to be alone on weekends. So I would always give my call to a friend, and then they would be busy. That would bring me, a low self, again, so less, self-sabotage.
Yep.
Oh, I'm like this, people don't want to be with me. So I remember when I started my journey as a theta healer, I started healing and releasing those fears that I had, or those blocks, that feelings, the limiting beliefs that we say that we have. I'm not good enough.
Yep.
Low self-confidence. I need to adjust to other people. I need to please them. I need to be there. I found out being lonely and alone is that when you're alone, you fall in love with yourself. You enjoy your own company.
Yep.
It doesn't matter whether someone gives you a call or not. You're
Yep.
just there on the couch and watching a movie and enjoying that time.
Yep.
You are in love with yourself. It's a very small space between both. It's just a change of little letters, but it is a drastic change as a person.
It is, right? It's a different feeling. And I think we can get sometimes so hung up on what we think we should be doing that we, like you said, we externalize, we try and fill the gaps that perhaps are inside with outside things. Yeah, the people pleasing and stuff. But I really love what you said there, is like, is that feeling of just being okay when you're by yourself. Because it's very different to be at home on the sofa watching TV and there's that little voice in your head that is reeling off all those limiting beliefs about not being good enough. Why don't people hang out with me? Da 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 da. Right? It's about being by yourself without that narrative inducing these emotions from you, I think. And that's an extremely powerful place to be. That being said, I still don't think, even if we feel really good alone, I still believe we all need social connection as well. And I think sometimes we can go too far on the pendulum and we can be like, well, no, I'm good on my own. I don't necessarily need anyone. I'm not going to make too much effort because I do enjoy my time. And then actually time passes and there's been perhaps less social connection. And now the relationships perhaps that we do have become a bit more distant, a little bit more separated, which can also help contribute to somebody that is feeling okay alone to shifting into that state of loneliness. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
I agree with you because it's just that once you start falling in love with you, your love with yourself, I found that people start connecting to you automatically. So it's all to call about balance. I'm not saying that you just have to be alone and fall in love with yourself, but you need to attract the right crowd. The right people, the right connection. And the moment you're healing your inner child, or you say your limiting beliefs or your feelings, it automatically brings in the right people. It doesn't trigger you anymore. You don't get angry, you don't feel resentment, you don't get upset, and you don't get jealous. Oh, that person has so many friends and I don't. You start communicating more. Oh, this is how I'm feeling. And I accept the fact this is how I'm feeling. I start accepting myself, my feelings, my emotions. I'm sad. I am alone. I am feeling lonely. So what can I do about it? So it's all about a balance. It's not that you just have to shut yourself out from people. Yes, a human is a social, I think, social animal. We really need people around. It's very difficult to survive. But the right people is the call. People who accept you, people who don't judge you, people who are there with you, who love you, and you love yourself. So it's just all about balance.
And that's a big part of the journey, isn't it, I guess, as well. So yes, we definitely do need the balance, but we have to almost sometimes go through that more intense periods of loneliness to be able to then recognize, okay, why am I not okay being alone? And then we start to fall in love with ourselves. And then it's like, okay, and now what does this look like when I am social? And then that's when it starts to just add more and more power really to our levels of fulfillment, I think, in life, isn't it?
Yes, completely agreed. Because if you're not in that phase, you cannot understand how it feels like.
Mm.
You will not accept yourself. You will not, understand yourself. You will not
Exactly.
go deep inside yourself. You will not even look into your emotions. So people, they're so scared. There's so much fear within them. They
Yeah.
don't even want to look at their emotions. Oh,
Mm.
this is what I'm feeling. This is what I am alone. I am feeling helpless. I'm feeling powerless.
Yeah.
Or I'm being judged. I'm judging myself. They just don't want to. They ignore it.
Yeah.
But when you're alone, it really gives you self-reflection.
Yeah.
And once you start accepting that,
Yeah.
the shift automatically happens.
I love that you've said that, because I was going to dive into feelings, because I think feelings actually really contribute to the state of loneliness. I don't believe that loneliness is an emotion. I think it's a state that we find ourselves in, and I think it is fueled by some core emotions or some core states. And I think I shared these with you prior to our call. Is like, I genuinely believe that like components of loneliness include things like fear that you've mentioned, separation, and shame. And I think these are things that probably don't get talked about enough, because like you just said, we don't want to sit with our emotions. They don't always feel good, and it can be quite scary to do that. But I think this is just from kind of my perspective and what I've kind of picked up over the years and what I think. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. But I think we start off in the world connected, right? Literally, we are connected to our mothers, and then immediately there's a sense of separation, right? We get separated from them, literally physically, through the umbilical cord. We experience that at such an early age that our whole energy shifts, and we're learning, how do we deal with the world now? So immediately there's a sense of fear that comes into place, because there's suddenly this big change. But then over time, that sense of separation can start to create that internal fragmentation, like you said earlier, about like the narrative that we have in our mind, what we think about ourselves. If we think that we're not pretty enough, or we're not fit enough, or we don't look a certain way, there's almost this feeling that this isn't me, but that is, but I'm not over there, that isn't me. So there's this almost like sense of separation inside of ourselves, and that creates shame. That then creates this idea of not accepting, like you rightly said just now as well, is that we don't accept who we are. We don't accept the feelings that we're in, and we think there's something wrong, and we then emotionally neglect ourselves. And then we create even more fear as a result of that, because now what if somebody judges me for it? And I know when I felt emotions like that, like shame, and had those kind of internal thoughts going, is that I then actually feel very dysregulated in myself. I start to feel unsafe within myself. I'm like, oh, well, people are judging me, right? So I need to protect myself. And that sense of protection, well, the shield goes up. Now there's more separation, right? And now that's this crazy like cycle that we're in. And I just
Definitely.
I feel like we need a spotlight on perhaps some of those feelings in self-reflection, to be able to really start to understand, how do we create all of these beliefs in the first place?
So I feel these all comes out, again, I will come back to the inner child.
Mm.
It's how your childhood, how have you been brought up?
Mm. Yeah.
What has been fed, how your parents have been, how your relationship has been,
Mm.
how your communication, how have you treated yourself?
Yeah.
How had someone looked at you? So it is a mental state again.
Yeah.
How mentally have you been stressed, or have you been given that love?
Mm.
So that you know what it is feel like to be communicating. So if I have some issues, I can always go that comfort. I don't feel separate. Oh, my parents are not going to listen to me,
Yeah.
or I can't share. Sometimes they bully. There's a lot of bulliness that happens in the schools.
Yeah.
Kids become so introvert, they go back into, parents don't ask them.
Yeah.
So the kid gets so mentally disturbed,
Mm.
and ultimately they start locking themselves in the room,
Yeah.
and that leads to so much trauma
Mm.
within you. And whatever you have had in your inner child or a childhood, that starts reflecting as you grow up.
Yeah.
And it only increases. It doesn't get less, but it keeps increasing and increasing, increasing. One day you're just by yourself.
Yep.
And you're so mentally disbalanced.
Yeah.
You really don't know what to do about with those emotions, because there's no one that you have learned to talk,
Yeah. And
understand you.
yeah, I really appreciate you saying that, because I think there's this idea, isn't there? Is like, yes, it does. Those reflections become stronger as we grow up. And I think when we enter relationships, if we're not already very self-aware, we just blindly follow those old patterns that we've learned and modeled growing up, right? But I think often there's this idea that, well, eventually everybody will leave you if you continue to go down that rabbit hole of thinking, and you don't change and you follow in the same footsteps as your parents. It's very typical that parents that have been divorced, their children will get divorced. There's a lot of like studies and research to back that up, that these patterns continue. But I think what I'm really trying to say here is that you can feel lonely even within a relationship. Like these tendencies can come up even if you have got a romantic partner or kids or a close group of friends. You can still feel lonely, and I think that doesn't get talked about enough either. What do you think?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So yes, I always feel this. Even if you have 10 people around you, you can feel lonely.
Yeah.
It's again, as you said, is a state of mind. Because if I have 10 people around me, and if I don't feel good enough, and I don't feel that I'm a self-confidence in myself, how much ever I have people who love me around, or I have 10,000 people around me, I'll still feel caught up into that mental state of mind, and I'll still feel lonely.
Yeah. Because we're looking right through our own internal lenses, aren't we? We're looking through the glasses of our beliefs. And if we believe that we're not enough, or if we believe that this person is better because you're also judging them, right? It's
Definitely.
like we get again stuck in this loop. So I do want us to kind of dive into, okay, well, that's definitely like a big problem that a lot of people are experiencing in quite a severe way now in society. And there are some solutions to that. But I think it's important to recognize, like, where are we now? Because you said something really important, which was that we start to withdraw, we start to lock ourselves in the room, right? And typically now, you was referring to like kids, for example, if they're getting bullied, but typically it's like they're locking the door, they're playing computer games, or they're playing on social media. But adults are doing the same thing too, but they're just doing it with Netflix and their social media, right? Or their job, and they're pushing their intention into something else. So I'd love to dive into, like, where do you think we are now with this really important topic of loneliness and the intensity that we're seeing in the world, and the use of technology? Is it helping us? Is it hindering us? What do you think's happening here?
I feel from my personal experience, I feel it's not helping us so much. Somewhere it's making us draw more into ourselves. It gives you, I started talking to kids, who are college going students, and they would say the gadgets are their friends. Because there is so much either they're confused, or there's so much low self-confidence within themselves. They feel very comfortable being on the computer. They feel very they being alone by themselves. They don't have to, no one's going to judge them. There's so much fear in them. They feel very comfortable with this, and this lack of communication that comes in again. They feel so they say they feel that gadgets are the one that is going to fill up that space. That emptiness within them, the loneliness that they feel, the computer, the games that they play in, or the WhatsApp, they're chatting. They don't know the other person on the other side, because the other person is not going to judge you. Or, whether you're watching a movie, you're just there in your introvert, your space. So no one is going to come over there and take that space. So they feel that, it is more safer, as you said. They feel more protected, they feel more safe. And they feel that this is much better space for me than to be out there into the world.
Yeah, exactly. I hear that for sure. And it's interesting. We've seen recently, haven't we, like in the news, like there's people in Japan that are marrying their AI robots. And it's like, what world are we living in? Like, if somebody had told me that, if somebody told my grandparents that, bless their hearts, if they were still with us, they would not know what to do with that sentence. It would make no sense whatsoever. And I think it just goes to show like how quickly things are evolving as well. And I do think technology can sometimes be an outlet for people, and that they are unknowingly perhaps channeling their emotions through either what they post or what they share or the games that they play. Sometimes it's a numbing tool, sometimes I think it's an outlet, sometimes I think it's just pure distraction and just on autopilot. But I also think that it can be hugely powerful if we use it in the right way. Because like you said earlier, is we're not talking about it enough. You know, we're not shining the spotlight on it. We're not taking the shame away from loneliness when we kind of hide in our technology, but actually we could start to use it as a force for good, as a platform for good. And I think that we're seeing some good ways of doing that. Things like listening to podcasts. Hopefully this is of a benefit to someone. But even things like we have an AI coach, which is like a supplementary thing that we have for our community, where they can go and talk completely confidentially to a trained bunch of coaches that is trained credibly with like very, very, very like well thought through framework that's been input into that product, so that they can actually start to open up in a way that makes sense for them. It's not a substitute for coaching and therapy and people and human connection, but it's opening a door. So the reason I mention that is because I think we're on the cusp of this beautiful opportunity, or we're on this tipping point where is there going to be a big fall coming on the other side of it.
Definitely. I feel we can use definitely the technology in a better way.
Yeah.
Because if it's rightly used, we can make a lot of friends online. People do that, you
Yep.
know, and we learn so many from the movies.
Yep.
There's so many things that it comes up, and there are so many ways we can use our social media in a right way.
Yep.
You know, to connect like-minded people.
Yep. Yeah.
You can connect, you can create groups, you can discuss, you can talk about it. Basically, I think people need, you know, a space to talk about it.
Yeah.
That I am alone. This is what I'm going through. And, you know, where we say a community.
Yep.
You know, on the social, we just create so much community on WhatsApp.
Yeah.
And then we start meeting each other.
Yeah. We wouldn't have met if it wasn't for being part of a mutual community.
Yes, technology.
Yeah, exactly. So I think it can be so powerful, but I think we have to start to have some awareness about how we're using it, because I do think that it is, I don't even think it's a blind spot, actually. And that's what I was about to say. I think it's just this thing that we're getting used to. We're normalizing it to be used in certain ways without perhaps raising our hand and saying, actually, this could be detrimental. What can we do about it? So I just think that if anyone listening, and I've had to check myself before, is like, how much am I using social media? You know, how much am I looking up things and trying to learn things and understand things because I'm trying to avoid being with myself and my own feelings? So it's very, very natural, and we're all human. But I think we have to start asking ourselves the question, what is driving this behavior? Like you said earlier, what are the feelings? What are the beliefs? And what's really happening there? And perhaps start to unpack that, because it's not as simple as, well, let's just go out and make new friends.
Yes. So even I've seen, you know, sometimes we don't want to accept our feelings, how we're feeling. We start watching movie, or we start distracting ourselves, ignorance, we ignore. But the moment we start accepting this is what it is, you know, automatically those emotions just subsides. You start, it's all boils down to understanding yourself. You know, the difference between, as we said, the loneliness and being alone. Am I feeling lonely, or am I feeling in love with myself and I am liking this space of my being alone? Like what people think. Prioritizing yourself.
And that's a really compassionate act, isn't it, to prioritize self? And I think that's something, well, compassion is the antidote to shame, right? So if we're feeling shame because we can't speak about how it is we feel embarrassed about it, or if there's something else from our past that we haven't perhaps processed, you know, and we're bringing shame into our day-to-day life, prioritizing yourself and giving yourself the same level of care you would give to somebody else that you love and that you care about can be incredibly powerful to start to just even open the door to connection. And when we start to open the door to connection, loneliness starts to dissipate.
Yes. So it's very important. The moment I start prioritizing myself, oh, you know, there are many times people don't do so many things for themselves. They just sit back, you know, they're doing for others and others and others all the time. They forget themselves. And that is what they start getting lonely. They start becoming an inside. And then they keep, you know, they just need people around themselves. Because they never got that attention, or no one gave them that love, that feeling that they really needed, or they did not look into themselves. As you said, the past.
So we're saying that our past is what's led us here, and at some point we have to check ourselves, check in with those feelings, thoughts, beliefs. Otherwise, we're going to probably continue on the same path, right? It will just, history will repeat itself, and our own behaviors will just enforce the next. But what is the what do you think the connection is to the next step out of that? So yes, the awareness piece is so important, but for me on my journey, like, I understood that I felt lonely, but I also didn't trust myself or other people to open up to. I didn't have the capacity to perhaps be as vulnerable as what I needed to really create those meaningful connections. So I feel like there's some steps there that perhaps stop us from going from loving ourselves, right, to meeting and connecting with other people. Can you tell us more about that?
Yes. So I feel for the loneliness to go away, my experience, once you start falling in love with yourself, accepting your beliefs and your emotions and talking about it,
Yeah.
communication,
Yeah.
and, you know, coming out of those belief system, and that especially people go through a lot, I'm not good enough.
Yeah.
Or comparing. We are always compared.
Yep.
She's like this, he's like that, she's much better, she's like that.
Yep.
So I feel once you start falling in love and make yourself to the priority, and you start understanding, I need to change, I need to be out of this, I need to understand now what has happened previously and what I need to do right now for myself to overcome it, and how I want to see myself in the future.
Yeah.
So the moment that shift that you bring within yourself and accept, yes, I'm sad. Yes, I'm going through a mental trauma. Yes, I'm overthinking. Yes, I'm stressed.
Yeah.
And, you know, you go into meditations or you take anything, a therapy or whatever you feel is right for you right now. We do it through healings, or we go into the inner child and, you know, we look into that and we release those emotions, or you can say the mental status. We work on the mental, the thinking, you know, like we do a lot of bar sessions that work on your brain, you know, those 32 points of your brain, and, you know, release all the mental stress. Once we start doing the small changes in ourselves and we start prioritizing and understanding, automatically we attract the better space.
Yeah. Can
And, you know,
could you share with our audience what those bar sessions might look like? So that might be the first time somebody's hearing about it. And I think it's important for people to be aware of the different modalities that are available to them. Because it's very common to hear about meditation, breath work, you know, NLP. There's lots of very well-known forms of healing and looking at this stuff. But I think sometimes it's important to just elaborate that a little bit more, if you could.
Yeah, sure. So bar session is something that we work on your brain.
Therefore,
for the overthinking that we have, the blocked emotions that we have, you know, and to bring your healthy, good health in your life, to less stress, less anxiety. So what we do, it's a session, it's an hour session where we touch those points which are there in your brain, or it's only on over here. So we know where to touch. So each space, each point, we can say pressure point on a brain side, has something that we have caught up with. It can be an emotion, it can be past feelings, it can be, you know, thought process that we have, or our conditionings that we can say. So as we are doing the session, that's getting released. So trust me, I've seen when I do that session for an hour, people who are having a thought which is like ongoing, you know, the chattering of the mind, after 2 sessions, it just settles down. Like if you have 1,000 thoughts, it is just like 100. And it works so beautifully.
I think it's really powerful, isn't it, when we can have those breakthroughs and those interventions. With that kind of modality, does somebody have to understand why they feel the way they do in order to release it? Because that's a common question, not necessarily in bar modality, but just in modalities in general. Because often, sometimes people feel a certain way, but they don't know why they feel that way. And maybe they don't want to, or are not ready to look behind the curtain at perhaps some of their past experiences.
No, they don't need to. They just need to accept and understand themselves. Yes, as long as you understand you're having a problem, and you want to solve it, that is more than enough.
Perfect. I'm so happy that you said that, because we talk about these things on the podcast quite often, and it's sometimes I think, and I just picture myself before I started on this journey and understood any of this, I would have listened to this and thought, well, that sounds like a really scary thing to do. I don't want to do that. I don't want to look behind the curtain.
Yeah.
I don't know what any of this means. And it's just like, absolutely no. But I think sometimes when we talk about like emotional release or accepting certain beliefs or changing beliefs, we think it's going to be really hard work. And yes, that, you know, to create lasting change, there does need to be some commitment to your healing, right? To your journey, because it doesn't just happen overnight. But it doesn't have to be painful. It doesn't have to be this horrible experience where you go and dig up all of your past trauma. And I think sometimes that having perhaps that misperception can prevent us from getting the help that we need. And that in itself creates more loneliness, more separation, because we never put our hand up and say, hey, I need some help.
Yeah. I always feel once a person says that I need help, I think they're 90% done.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's always like, you know, accepting, yes, I am in that state. And yes, I am going to stretch my hand ahead and get help from it. And trust me, after that, rest automatically falls in place.
Yeah. I love that. I love that our clients often say to us, like, how did you know, like at the start of coaching, like, how was you so sure that I was going to get this result? And they ask this much later. They're curious about it in the beginning, but much later, they're like, how did you know? And it's because it's exactly what you just said, because 90% of the work is you just showing up and saying, hey, there's something going on. I need some support. And I think that's just, it's so powerful, because you can almost like borrow somebody else's belief in you. And I think when you listen to conversations like this and you hear of like different ways of doing things, it can build that little bit more faith into what your options are.
Yes, definitely. I feel it's always to do that one step. And a lot of people have so much fear again to take that one step.
Yeah.
You know, and that is, I think that is the biggest, I feel they're very courageous, those people who really accept and come forward. And I think those are the people who make it.
Yeah. And that goes against popular belief, isn't it? That if there's something wrong, that it's actually a weakness. It's not courageous at all to do that. It's actually like really cowardly to do that. I don't want to put my burden onto somebody else's plate. You know, it's a very common one as well, isn't it? It's like they've got enough going on in their life. I don't want to ask them. And it's like, actually, it takes so much more strength and so much more courage to just lean into it. And I know it's easy for us to say because we're almost like on the other side of the fence now, but at the same time, it's still sometimes hard. Even now, after all of the years I've been doing this work and the coaching that I do, sometimes it's still hard to ask for help. But we have to do it in order to be able to bring that sense of self-connection back, because we're always unlocking new things about ourselves, aren't we?
Definitely. It's a journey again. And I feel asking for help, even people when you don't know. Just ask.
Yeah.
What the worst can happen? Someone can say no. There'll be someone who will say yes to you.
Yeah, exactly.
So I feel people who really put forward and they come forward, they're the most courageous people who have understood themselves and they want to be out of this loneliness.
Exactly.
They want to be out of this state and they're no more fearless. They're fearless, basically. They're no more fearing it.
Yeah.
They don't feel separation. They want to start feeling that connection back.
Yeah.
They want to connect to everyone now.
What is the role that you feel that authenticity plays in loneliness and our journey to connection?
Can you elaborate that? I did not understand.
Yeah, so I believe that authenticity plays a big role in our overall well-being. So I think if we believe that we can be truly authentic, typically it's easier to connect with others because we're just being real. So I'm curious to know from your side, like, do you think that authenticity plays a role in our journey from feeling loneliness to feeling connected?
I feel it does, definitely. Because when you believe in something, that's how it's going to connect to someone else who believes into the same thing.
Yeah.
So when you're authentic,
No, I was just going to say, our brain, it likes what's familiar, right? So as well, if you see somebody that's just being truly themselves, there's something real about that. There's something familiar, even if they are different in the way they are being authentic. There's this synergy, right? There's this like almost like kindred spirit type of feeling when you meet.
It's like a connection.
Yeah.
It's a mental connection, you know, that you feel with someone else.
That's how we bond, right? And when we bond, we feel
it's like like-minded people.
Yeah, exactly. So listen, I feel like we've covered an awful lot in a very short space of time here, but I would really love it for you to just perhaps share some like really practical tips that our listeners could maybe take from your personal experience, or some of the things you've done with your clients that you've worked with that could perhaps help them on their journey out of loneliness.
First thing that I always advise when the clients come to me is that they need to self-love. Prioritize yourself.
Yeah.
We in the run of the helping others or, pleasing others, we forget ourselves.
Yeah.
And we get so used to it. And, after some times when those people start moving out, we start feeling alone. That's what creates loneliness. So I always suggest people first, they should prioritize, because if you're in a good space, you can give a good space to someone else. It's like if my glass of self-love is full, I can give it to someone else and connect to the same people.
Yeah.
One thing I always tell this to them. Second, I always tell them to accept their emotions. Ready to accept that I need help.
Yeah.
That one step, that courage and invest in yourself. It's amazing when you do something, that can change your life. And why not?
Yeah, exactly. Why not? That's the question. Why?
Yeah, why not? People think so much. I always tell my clients when they come to me, you do this, you're investing it. And what best can be if you're investing it on yourself?
Yeah.
Which is going to make you a better version.
So
which is going to get you out of your trauma.
So what does self-love look like to you? If you was going to break that down, because often if somebody is feeling lonely and there is an element of shame associated with it, it can be hard to lean into self-love, right? Because then typically, not always, but typically there are self-sabotaging behaviors that come up, and almost this idea that, well, I don't deserve that self-love. So what do you say to somebody that might be thinking that?
Okay. So I make them do exercises when they're pushed to do them, and they start understanding, oh my God, I was missing this. So I have this program that I do where I make them do small things for themselves.
Okay.
Sometimes I tell a client to go and buy a flowers for themselves. There's so many people out there, they never do. So when they flowers for themselves, or hug themselves, or, create something for themselves, or look into the mirror and just say that you're so beautiful every day.
Yeah.
I'm the best version. Talk to yourself.
Two things really stand out there. What you said is, one, looking at yourself in the mirror. I think that's incredibly powerful, and people don't know the power of it because you're seeing yourself, you're looking yourself in the eye. And I mean, look at yourself in the mirror, and look yourself in the eye. Don't look at this bit of poor bad skin over here, or this bit of extra weight. Yeah. No, it's like, look yourself in the eye and see yourself, see what's beyond what you see.
Accepting yourself as you are.
Exactly. That's incredibly powerful, because until you can see yourself, others will not see you for who you truly are, and that can obviously then create a bit of friction in connection as well. The second thing that you said there is create something for yourself. I believe that is actually gold, what you've just said, because I think when we start to lean into creativity, that unlocks a certain level of authenticity within us, and that, like we just said, connects into these feelings of shame, fear, trust, vulnerability, and ultimately helps us to connect. So why do you think those activities that you give to your clients, why do you think they are so powerful, and how quickly do you see a change in them?
Oh, I see a great change in them. They literally come and say they just fall in love. They start doing things for themselves, and people around them, their family members says, this changed so much. They go for coffee by themselves. Some people don't even go. They always need a company.
Yeah.
And it's so powerful. They start accepting when they look into themselves in the mirror. They come and tell me, how beautiful I am. How lovely I am. And the moment the glass is full within, they start reflecting it outside. There's nothing called loneliness anymore. There's nothing called shame. There's nothing called fear. There's nothing called separation. You're one with yourself, and you're one with the universe. You're one with the people. It just automatically happens.
That sense of oneness, I think, is ultimately that's the opposite of loneliness and separation, isn't it? And I think when we can lean into that, and I truly believe those who have strong faith feel less alone, for sure. And I think everybody can have their own sense of faith, whatever that means to them. But I think that is underrated. And for a long time, for me and my personal experience, I didn't have faith in anything bigger than what I saw right in front of me. Like, it just was, I didn't believe in anything, really. I always felt that there was something. I always have believed in this ripple effect, that I can just say this one thing, or I can just do something in the atmosphere and it could change something else, right? And I think, like, no matter how small it is, I think it's happening for a reason. But I never really connected that to anything else. I never really reflected on that. And when I started to reflect on, why do I feel so confident that everything happens for a reason, but yet I feel so disconnected over here? Like, it didn't make sense. There was a conflict. So I had to, I guess, to explore that and think about, well, it was connection. It was literally connection was the thing that was missing. Like, why is this happening? And what do I believe in now? And I think when we start to believe in something that is beyond us, we start to actually see how things are connected even more deeply than what we would have before. Does that make sense?
Yes, definitely it makes sense. And that's the truth. I feel once you start, and for me, I feel very strongly, once you start believing in yourself, everything shifts.
Yeah.
Once you start trusting in yourself. And I always tell this one thing to my clients: if you have fear about something, then jump into it the first. Just do it.
Yeah.
What worst can happen?
Yeah, obviously you're not talking about like danger, right? You're talking about unwarranted.
No, not that.
It's just to clarify for our listeners, just
no.
like
I mean, when people have this, the fear of standing for themselves or voicing out,
Yeah.
Once you start, practicing, once you start getting out of those fears, you will feel very confident.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think I agree with that completely, because we have this tendency, don't we, when we do feel fear, like particularly unwarranted fear, we try to control it or we run from it, right? Is our typical behaviors. Yes, we've got fight, fleas off, right? But we really typically in our behaviors, we see that sense of withdrawal or control. But when we start to accept that actually this is all happening, like it's all unfolding because actually there isn't separation, then there's nothing to avoid anymore. You can't avoid something that's connected.
Yes.
Right. And you can't control something that is already connected and is bigger than us. Right.
Definitely.
So it doesn't make any sense.
Yes, it does. And it's such a beautiful feeling.
Yeah.
When you connected, especially I feel that very strongly when you connected with the universe. And once that kicks in and that feeling kicks in, that you're sync with the universe.
Yeah.
And you're just not connected with few people, you're connected with everyone around.
Exactly.
The connection just happens.
I think it's an interesting tangent that we've come on here with this conversation, because I think this is also something that could actually be really helpful for somebody listening that might be struggling to connect with people. Because there's definitely some deeper work there, like we've said, about the emotions and why are we feeling the way that we are, but we can still almost take those smaller steps and connect with the other things, like an animal and like the plant. Look at just go and study the human body and see how it's also connected and how that's mirrored in nature. Do you know what I mean? So if suddenly connected, going from real loneliness, like deep, sad, hard, dark loneliness, to going to connect with people, is a huge jump.
Yes,
so just
definitely.
I guess start where you feel is most natural, I guess, is what I want to say to our listeners, because you can find connection in any little thing.
Yes. So for example, I tell people to go out and connect into the nature. They can hug the tree. You can release so much. You can talk to plants. It's a connection again. Sometimes you can just run with the waves. It's again healing you. It's again getting you connected to the water, to the earth, to the air. And when you're hugging the tree, it's the most beautiful exercise that you can do. It makes you feel so much, your heart chakra opens up. Letting go of yourself, and the nature heals you so beautifully. It's like connecting. You feel you're connected with the universe. You're connected with the universe. You are connected with the deeper self of yours. And that loneliness just vanishes in that one moment.
Exactly.
It's the most beautiful thing that you can do. Go in an early morning, hug a tree, and just be there. Tell everything that you want, that you haven't told anyone.
Yeah.
Your fears, your darkest secrets. It is just there to listen. And you feel the connection.
It's incredibly powerful. I a few years ago, wasn't that long ago, a couple of years ago, when I was living in Thailand, I had this crazy idea to kayak around 3 different islands, it's pretty much back to back. So it was 150 kilometers. It ended up being like 37 hours of kayaking by the time I'd finally finished. And big part of that challenge was the training for it, right? And at the time, I was going through just, natural changes. I was really just like looking more deeply into myself. I was exploring parts of myself that I probably hadn't explored before. I was like working on some deeper healing that I hadn't looked at before. And there was this like almost like symbol, and it was really interesting because it was a good friend of mine that was almost like working through this stuff with me, and she was like a really good support system for me, and she's got this thing about butterflies, and every time I walked along the beach, or every time I was out in my kayak training for this challenge, I would either see a shell that was the shape of a butterfly, or I would see butterflies around me. And like I knew, like, because when I was seeing it as well, something was going on in my mind or in my heart or in my body, and I was feeling something, and then I would see it, and I would see that as this beautiful affirmation that just this is the right path. So it's like whenever I see a butterfly or something that resembles a butterfly now, I'm very much just like reminded this is all how it's supposed to be, and this is it. Like this is all connected, because how can that possibly happen if it's not all connected? And there might be.
I agree with you. Universe is always connecting to you. How you're going to connect with it is always the call. So for example, people see angel numbers 111, 222, and you will see, oh my God, like you will be doing something and you just put like your hand like this and the time, just to see the time, and it's exactly when they have told you to see it. You're like, oh my God, you're seeing 222. Exactly. So, it's always that how you are going to connect with the universe.
Yeah.
Again, I always tell people, the moment you take that one step, that you are in that space of loneliness or any other thing, everything falls in place. The universe will work for you. The things will automatically come to you. You will sync with it. You'll attract things for yourself. So it's just that it's very simple. Just connect to yourself and accept.
Yeah, I mean, if we're going down this route, aren't we? It's very much like we don't even need to try. Like we just need to get out of our own way.
Yeah,
that's really it, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very simple. It's a very simple step. And and your stress lows down. There's so many things, because the loneliness takes the most toll is on the health. It's the mental health. It brings a lot of things, people go through. The major issues comes in. Your body goes through a lot. So why should we go through all this? If that one step can help you, then why not?
Exactly. And I think it was Gabriel Marte has done a lot of work on this as well, around the depths of loneliness and how that impacts our health, particularly from trauma. But it's something that's really fascinating to listen to. So if there's somebody listening to this episode that is feeling like there's something more going on here, and they're struggling to perhaps do some of the things that we've mentioned in this episode, start to learn about it all, start to understand it, and go down the route intellectually if you need to get you on the path. Because I think that can sometimes be a useful tool, just to build that sense of trust within yourself that actually this isn't so scary, and it is okay to look at some of those emotions, look at some of those beliefs, and then be able to take those steps forwards.
Yes.
Neetu, is there anything that you want to add to the conversation around loneliness that we haven't covered already?
Okay. I would just like to tell those listeners out there, I have been there. So I know it's not easy. There's so many times that we are so alone. There's so much loneliness that catches up, and we're always trying to fill it up. Or ignoring it. And that is what leads us to the mental health goes for a toss. Definitely we go into depression. And then many times we don't even know we are in depression. We feel going out, grooming ourselves, or that is to bring ourselves out of that loneliness, calling friends for going out, or, grooming ourselves, or doing other things, that is going to get us out. Trust me. The day you start loving, I feel that is my strong feeling where I was, I think, 5 years back or 6 years back, and where I am today is a lot of change. It's mostly to do with that one step. Yes, I need help to communication.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm in depression. I'm going through a mental health. I really need to accept it, see my emotions, see my limiting beliefs, see my triggers, and how I can take that step to come out. And no need for me to, and forget that you're being judged.
Yep.
Who cares?
Yep.
Just who cares? I need to be out of it. That should be your call. It doesn't matter what people think.
Yeah.
I am going to do it for myself.
Yeah. People are always going to think what they think, regardless of what you do or don't do. You know, that you can do everything right and you can do everything wrong, and you're going to be judged either way. So like, you just got to do you, right?
So yes, and invest on yourself.
Yeah.
Whatever it takes to get you out, do invest on yourself. It's you.
Yeah.
You should be your priority.
Yeah. 100%.
Because if you're in a good state of mind and you're in a good state of good health, you can always help others.
Yeah.
You can guide them. You know, it's like putting a mask on yourself first when you're in the flight.
Yeah.
And then you can put it on someone else.
Yeah, exactly. Neetu, thank you so much for what you shared today in today's conversation. Where can our listeners come and find you if they want to continue to follow the work that you do?
They can follow me on Facebook. I'm there on social media, on even on Insta.
Yep.
And they can always WhatsApp me or give me a call.
Okay, amazing. So we'll put all of your details in the show notes, so it's nice and easy to find for our listeners. But thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. Thank you so much.
If you enjoyed this episode and you haven't done so already, hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode.
Then share it with a friend who you think might benefit.
Spread the word. That's how we're going to impact the world, by helping each other.
We appreciate you so much, and as always, unconditional love and wellness to you.